and then try to take the finest cut that I can. I guess I'm gonna try that on this. Screw it up too bad.
You can get that guard out, chip it out if you want.
It's just like your guard, right, Ken? When he hooks the electrodes.
This has already turned better than I do. You really want me to turn on this, Charlie?
Just go for it. Yeah, that's fine.
I very seldom will start right at the tip. It's been sitting here for a little while, so it's hot down. How about that? So we gotta get it around first.
That's a good idea. When you want to get up a little bit closer, people come around and you can try to get them to not do it, so you can see where that tool is actually being used there.
Usually pretty much tell how the cut is going by the chip you're taking off. Basically, it's right on the bevel. Always try and go away.
The bevel on the grind, all the roughing on the wood.
Yes. Here. This roundhouse and flat sides are all gone. Try and smooth it up. My goal is to start sanding it one. So that would kind of fit myself, right? Mostly I try not to start bleeding. And depending on the wood.
How long is the one guy after your first one?
Well, it's him. I turned it everything green. To start with that. It'll be anywhere from probably a minimum of a month and a half to a maximum of 6 or 7. I started out in a paper bag, and after a month or so, I put it in a bag and put it on the shelf.
In the shop?
Yep.
Heated shop or unheated?
Oh, semi-heated. thick, I'll put it up there. It's not. And that'll do it. Well, I'm done. Yeah, how are we gonna do that on the maple?
Now, one thing that I do, I don't know,
Go ahead.
but just a suggestion, gizmos and gadgets. When I turn the outside of a bowl, a place turn bowl like this, you've got a big chunk of wood, and this is all solid wood. When you turn this outside, you're not gonna get any vibration or anything. But on the twice turn bowls, when you're trying to do those last cuts, they tend to vibrate, particularly when you get up here toward the brim. Take a piece of plywood, any old piece of plywood, cut it about to the size or a little bit bigger than your bowl. Put it on here, bring that tailstock right up, squeeze it right in there good and tight. It'll take all that vibration right out. And then you can, whatever cut you want to do. But I've got plywood discs all over the place, so I kind of find one. But it doesn't have to be anything fancy, an old piece of CDX. But that'll work really well.
Not for a natural top, but just for a straight top.
What do you mean? There you go.
Right, down here.
No, this will be fine. Is that the inch and quarter? Yeah. Take a one over here? Walking along. Yeah. Take this off and I'll get that. You have the pliers for that?
A couple years ago, I was.
Going up?
Yes. Yep. Where is that?
Where's that maple bowl that's around here? There you go. Here it is. I think it was this one.
Now this one will get thinned down quite a bit. And this works really well on maple. Not so, that's why I didn't want to do it on the walnut. Sometimes it'll work on the walnut, sometimes it won't. I haven't done this before.
Yes.
What I want you to see is the shaving that this takes off. So all those little ridges that when I hopefully pass it around, maybe saw coming off. I use this quite a bit, and like I say, on different woods it works better.
That one you made?
No, I think there's hand saws, I think. You can make them, old bandsaw blades, you have big bandsaws, they work well.
How do you get the burr on it? The burring tool?
I just use a flat file. I used to work in a guitar shop, and we used to use scrapers all the time. It saves huge amount of sanding and sandpaper.
I had miles and miles of bandsaws for you guys. Not anymore. But you can cut up old handsaws too.
I put it in a vise, and I put it in a flat file with a slight angle.
They're flexible and you can cut them up.
Straight, good scraper is a whole lot easier to sharpen, and you gotta keep working your way around the curve. So, they usually come in a half a 3. Yeah. Yeah. I don't, you can, it'll make a bigger bird and probably cut a little faster. Now, if you hear that right there, that's a vibration, and you'll probably be able to see the marks. And when that happens, usually if you tilt it at a different angle, it'll take those right out, and you won't get that. Like I say, it works better on some woods than others. Maple works really well.
Is this red
Right.
maple? Yeah. Is this red maple or sugar?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this particular one's a gooseneck scraper.
It is a great idea, yeah. Yep, you try to catch it, you go back and pull it, it's thinner and thinner, yeah. Well, that's what they used before they had good sandpaper.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They lay a floor, and there's the old tools you can get, they're sort of like spoke shave. Yep. But you slide one of those in, there's a couple of nuts that will flex the, and then they usually go right up the floor, and if you use them on hardwood, you know, it's a smooth surface up, it'll give you just a mirror finish. Yeah, but I never thought of that, that's really what you get hot,
It'll get hot, yeah.
so the sandpaper. At least in my shop. Friction is friction, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I think Chemtrust.
I don't know if St. Trust has that kind of stuff. I don't think.
Jerry should be here.
You can't get them online.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Any instrument. I use that for everything but the very first rough edge. I'll use a heavier, same thing. That and snap those off too many times.
Do you have different sizes, or do you just use that stuff? You just use that one? That's one of the tools I have trouble with.
What's that?
That's one of the tools I have trouble with. And I don't know if I'm sharpening it, whatever it is. Yeah, sharpening.
What do you use for
For the sharpening, I have a Vantage sharpener, and it's got a wheel probably that big around. Woodcraft Supply used to sell those 100 years ago. The guy that made it for them stopped making them, and I don't know why they never pursued it after that. Woodcraft Supply would buy any one of those. Anybody ever wants to sell, they'll buy it themselves for their shop, for their sharpening.
So do you free use?
Do you set a rest up, so some of the rests are set so you put the bottom of the handle, I set it so it goes right here, so it doesn't stick out the balloon too far. And you just set it on there and you just roll that around, it continues, so.
Yeah, so you don't use it.
So I have both gouges set for the same distance on the thing, so I don't hardly ever have to change it unless I'm sharpening some other strange chisel that I don't use very much. And it's no big deal, you just do it on a slider. And I'll sharpen a chisel in 15 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I am, Bob. You have to rehearse myself.
So when you get the break, when it turns on to the southern wood, right?
No, I told him I was gonna sign up for 3 years. Wasn't gonna be a lifer, but.
So what really happened was Charlie called me, he said, I got this idea of someone to talk about sandpaper. I don't have a clue what you would say about it, because there's nothing really to say. I don't know what to do, so will you. So that's how it developed. So I said, sure, why not? Sandpaper is pretty simplistic as far as looking at the material itself. Break it down into there's one of two categories. It's either the economy stuff, you go into job lots, you can get a 5-pack for $1, and it's probably the garnet, and it's going to wear out 5 times as fast. Or you get the better grade stuff. And a few years ago, there wouldn't have been any argument in my mind to tell you that Norton put out the best product ever. It was 3X, and it lasted forever. The paper was durable, yet you could fold it, you could work it, you could make it follow the contours. Now they don't make it any longer. They got into some kind of a copyright conflict or something with 3M. So right now it's between the Norton, which they call their 3X technology, not to be confused with the good stuff they used to make, or the 3M papers. They're pretty similar, I think, from what I've used. The thing that I've run into when I grab a small pack of the 3M, it seems every time I get it, I get this no-slip backing. And I guess that's probably made to put onto a vibrating sander or something. But if you're using it by hand, as soon as you fold it upon itself, you're stuck. It doesn't come apart, you can't do anything else with it. So I'm still using the Norton products, and everywhere I look, that's about all I can find. So you're looking at the thickness of the paper backing. So the paper itself is the paper with the abrasive put onto it, and you've heard of the whole line about the different sizes and the grits and all that stuff. I don't understand it all, doesn't really matter. You know, the lower the number, the rougher it is. Start someplace you're comfortable. A few years ago, I worked at Whitney Brothers. We had a lot of salespeople come through, and this was probably 5 years ago now. Somebody gave me a couple samples, and it was a rubberized, like a Mylar, but it was very flexible. I only had a couple of sheets of it, but it worked slick, and I've looked, and I've not been able to find it since. I don't know if this was a prototype that they were playing with or not, but it didn't get hot. It didn't wear out for hours. You could use it for the longest while. So I'm still looking for that. If anybody sees it anywhere, spread the news around the group.
Polyester backing, right?
Yeah, but it was like a translucent
Yep.
rubber. Yeah, really slick stuff. But I don't know. So it came, after looking up and thinking about, what brilliance we could share tonight. It really is more about how you use it than the paper itself. And it goes back to kind of reinforcing some of the things Charlie said in his demonstration. And I tried to pay a little closer attention the last week or so as to what I do more by second nature, because after a while you stop thinking and you just do stuff and you say, after we're done, why did I do it that way? So there's some things that I've developed over the years. I've learned by trial and error, mostly error. And if you want it to go better, if you fall back to those things and you think about them and you follow them, it makes life easier. One of the first things is to sand on lower speeds. The first thing you pick up in your manual is says you can sand at the highest speed you can turn that lathe, and that's dead wrong. It generates heat. Heat will soften up the adhesive that holds the grit on the paper, so the grit falls off faster. It'll start to burn your hands, dry them out, and the fingers will start to crack faster. Also, you start to get a little air cushion and a buildup of sawdust and grit under that paper, so you're not touching the piece half the time. So if you slow that lathe down, you'll start making finer sanding coming off, more consistent sanding coming off. And if you keep going, and then as you check, when you're ready, just before you think you're ready to change to another grit, stop and examine the piece and make sure that you've got every tear out, every gouge, every tool catch. If you do it before you change grits, you're going to make your life a lot easier. And it's just getting into that habit of doing those things. I'm as anxious as everybody else. I want to get the finish on there, put it aside, start the next project. But during the sanding process, if you go through and you dust them off between grits, if you take and just brush it down, I either have an old towel or old paintbrush and I'll brush it off, because what's happened is the adhesive, the abrasive is coming off of that paper, mixing with the sawdust, it's building up there. So if you don't clean it off and you come in with your next grit of paper, you're just grinding that in as well. And each of those grits are the coarse number, the larger the grit, they're the ones that are causing more lines and scratches in the piece. So you want to get rid of that stuff, clean it up pretty well, go to your next grit and just keep repeating that process. One other thing perhaps before you change grits is stop the lathe, take it and just hand sand in the direction of the grain. Look and make sure you're getting all those circular rings out of it. And again, I do that about half the time, and then when I'm all done and get that first coat of finish on, there they are. You know, they'll pop right up. And it's because you rushed it, you didn't think it through whenever you were getting ready to make that change.
What speeds? What do you say if you have a 12-inch bowl in here?
Well, a 12-inch bowl, you have to think about surface feet. How much material is flying by that one point? So a 12-inch bowl, the math works out really nice on that. There's about 3 feet in the diameter of that bowl. So if you're turning it 500 RPMs, you just covered 5 football fields, in that 1 minute. That little paper's got to wear out. So I usually turn it under 500, 400 or 500, somewhere in there. And again, it depends on the size. The smaller bowl isn't going to be traveling as much material by it, so you can buy a little higher speed. But nowhere near the top end of the machine that the guidebook says to go with. So 300, 500 maybe, somewhere near is a good place to start. Depends on the kind of wood as well. If it's a tight grained, the maple, that stuff is so tight and small that
I turn it about 80.
you can, yeah, if you want to keep a nice sawdust coming off of there, right. The other thing I run into with segmented stuff is if you have an open grain wood next to something like Paduke, you now have orange stripes and everything along the whole pole. So you have to, I take the shop vac and I'll go through and I'll vacuum it, put that nozzle right on there and let it dry as much as I possibly can out. I've got too many bowls that have funny looking color stripes in there. So wipe away all the dust, fine paper grits, sand by hand. Again, it's really not, there's nothing that says you can't. You don't have to do anything under power. You can find those bad spots and focus on those, get them cleaned up before you go on to the next one. A worn out piece of paper is not the same as the finer grit. That's a golden rule. A worn out 220 is not the same as a 320. It just doesn't work. It's the size of those grits. A few of those will start digging in and catching along the way. As it wears out and the grits leave the paper, and you're really trying to stretch that piece of paper, all you're really doing then is burnishing. You're down to a piece of paper rubbing on the wood surface. It's like taking the brown paper shopping bag and polishing it up. And that's fine, except the finish won't penetrate equal. You'll get some blotches and things along the way when that happens, when you burn it and heat it up with that. At Whitney, when I was there, I was head of engineering, and anytime there was a problem, it was engineering's fault. So you went out on the floor, you tried to figure out just what was causing it. And in the finishing area, it was usually too fast a speed, too much pressure. So the same thing applies here. If you are going by hand and you're grinding that into the piece, you're causing more problems than you're curing. You'll do more by sanding by hand. With sanding by hand, you're reversing direction, just like turning the lathe in the opposite direction, but every time you're sanding back and forth, you're breaking those fibers off that have got rolled over and all pointing the same direction the lathe was, the opposite direction the lathe was spinning, I guess you'd say. So by taking the time to do that, you're going to break those down, you're going to smooth it out quicker, you're going to move on to the next step. You can take, if you've got a nice bright light, and you can shine it at the surface off at a 45, you'll pick up errors, blemishes, scratches faster than you will, especially when you have old eyes and under fluorescent lights in the shop. So just little tricks. The last thing that I've started doing recently is on my final finish, after it's all done, before I go down and I get ready to buff and wax, I'll take a little bit of wet sandpaper, just a few drops of water, no pressure whatsoever, but I'll knock off those last few little dust specks that you can feel but you can't see. And then by the time I get ready to, get the wax on there, it's pretty darn smooth and things have improved a lot. I've never been overly proud of my finishes. I've always struggled with them, never really could feel good, but they're starting to get better. So, again, if you remember the steps along the way, don't skip too many of them, you can help yourself out a lot. Just out of curiosity, what sandpapers are you using? Other than the Nortons or the 3M or Norton?
I get mine from Klingsport. There's a place online, Klingsport. They have pretty good prices and they get a wide range of selections as far as what kind of papers and what quality papers you got, and different, don't have the holes for your standards and stuff like that. And it beats the prices I found around.
What's your impression of the Home Depot sandpapers, which are in large packages, colored purple and pink and off-white?
Is that made by 3M?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it is. I think for me, I don't think it lasts quite as long as the Norton. And I don't know, do they have one without the sticky bag? Because every time I've been there, I end up gluing the bags together. So.
Some of the papers glue together, some in fact don't.
Okay.
And I can probably say, my late father worked for Norton Company in Worcester for 40 years.
Yeah. Ellen?
I have a little trick for like small turnings that I use, and it's kind of a female thing. I use nail files. They come in 4 or 5 different, you can get like a block, and it has like 3 or 4 different files.
And each side is a different grit?
And it goes down with the buffer tube, so you can just.
Oh, we know that. We do our nails all the time. You're not telling us.
I don't, but I like this stuff. My husband gives me this stuff in my Christmas stocking that I don't use on me, and I have to use it, so I go down to the shop and use it.
Well,
But on
they work
small
good for him.
turnings-
That's why he shares them with you.
Yeah. They really do work good, especially if you're using small turnings or like acrylic, if you have that kind of finish.
Brian's tried to get in here.
What's your progression of grills?
Again, because I'm doing a lot of segmented stuff, I'm starting with kiln grind hardwood lumber. I usually start at 150, I go to 220. Sometimes I skip up to 400. If I've had too many tear outs, I'll have to back up and start at 100. So that's the range. Again, it says don't skip any grits. Well, you'd be there all day going through the entire possibility of gritted sandpaper.
For the cleaning of the wood, what's your comparison of the vacuum, of an air compressor, of a towel, or a paintbrush, a dry paintbrush?
I have to watch out with the shop vac because I will scratch it sometimes. I'll get that in there or I'll leave a black mark from the plastic handle. So I have to watch out. Generally, I use an old hand towel, and then that gets pretty loaded with dust. What I do now is after I've again, when you start to approach that last time out, I'll just take a clean sheet of paper towel, Bounty, nice and fluffy. And even though I've wiped it with something else or vacuumed it, with that, you'll end up with a little bit of dust, visible dust, on the paper towel.
Do you ever use the Arbornet paper? This like the mesh type?
I haven't, no. Except the drywall.
Oh, I love this, I use it all the time. It does fills up relatively fast, but you just shake it off, go through it, lasts a long time. It's fairly expensive.
Another thing I started doing is I bought a little nylon brush. It comes with a set with a brass one and a stainless steel. Well, I'll take that and brush the sandpaper, just open it up again. It's not supposed to clog, you bang it, but that nylon brush will clean them up and that will extend the life of it a little bit longer.
That works really well on this mesh kind of sanding material. If it gets gummed up, and I found on greenwood that mesh works better than sandpaper. And when it gets clogged, you just take that little brass brush and clean it out.
Yeah, we just got
Curtis?
Do you ever wipe down your bowl with water to raise the grain and then sand it back down?
I haven't. I've taken lacquer thinner sometimes, just again, more to clean out the dust from a off-colored wood, a bright colored wood. I've tried that because that won't raise the grain. It will dry quickly and doesn't really soak in as much. Brian?
Yeah, we
got a value pack of Merca. I think it's softer than the Norton. I've only used it a couple of times so far, but you know, and I gave Charlie some too. The back is more pliable, I think, than the Norton.
Okay, yep.
To do that, and it wears even, yeah, and it doesn't, one of my biggest frustrations, you get a piece and you get, like a stray grit, that digs down deeper, irritates the crap out of you. And that seems to be kind of pretty good so far, so.
What's the?
Merca, M-I-R-K-A.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been using that. You can go down to, like, I've got some of the 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000. I use those when I'm doing the finishing. But spray it down with a spray bottle and then hit it with that and the finish is walking out and finish.
The price is pretty competitive with the Norton.
Yeah, it
Super.
makes a big difference.
But you have to get that online, is it?
Yeah, and I
I
can't
get it
remember.
from Amazon.
Yeah.
One little trick that I learned, actually over at Pinkerton spring there at the symposium. The fellow's name was Bush, and he had a display there, he was selling this Bush oil, which is a finishing oil, basically a tongue oil thing. He also sold carborundum sandpaper. And I was talking with him and he said, it's pretty simple to tell how good your sandpaper is. Just fold it in half, wear it tight, and then open it up. See if there's any grit left on the fold. Good sandpaper will have grit left on the fold. Cheaper stuff just splits. And, he was talking to a spindle sander, and for getting into, down into between coves and beads and things, you need that grit on that fold where you've got your, and I tried it a couple times. I actually bought some of the sandpaper. It works good, but the stuff Brian mentioned, that Merca sandpaper, it also seems to hold pretty well in the fold.
Hold in the fold.
Hold?
Hold in the fold.
Good.
When do you use steel wool?
I don't.
Not in the sanding, but I do not recommend it in the sanding process. It's what they call a soft abrasive, so any irregularities that you have, be it, little bumps, or it's just gonna go over them. And it'll kind of smooth them out, but it's not flattening.
So I've heard of some people who have used steel wool rather than sandpaper between the coats of the finish.
Again, you can, and I use it after I'm all done finishing to buff it out. But personally, I don't like it between coats because it does the same thing I just mentioned. If you put a coat of finish on there, there's a little bit of dust in the air or whatever. And the finish dries, and then you're going to sand between coats. If you use steel wool, it's just going to round over those bumps and irregularities. Personally, I'd rather take the old sandpaper and flatten them off. I mean, that's just my usual. That's good.
It may have already been mentioned, but I like to fold paper in thirds, right? Seems to give you the right amount of stiffness for.
I tear mine into eighths. But,
No, folding it, the individual pieces.
and then
So
fold
you're
it.
not using like a flat sheet of sandpaper.
Yeah, get a little cushion built in.
Right, right. You fold it in half and then it just kind of does this on you, so
Yeah.
you lose, your power transmission on it,
Yeah.
right?
You got to get yourself a glove.
Yeah.
Clean Store also has a product called J-Cloth. It's a cloth-based paper. It's extremely flexible. It will follow your smallest contours. It lasts forever. It doesn't seem to load up. They sell it in rolls for really cheap prices, 2-inch rolls. So you just rip off the piece however long you want. You don't have to fold it. You can fold it, and it seems to last and last.
Is that a cloth bag?
It is, it's cloth, J-cloth. I think they have a new word for it now, but they used to call it J-cloth, and it's very flexible.
Yeah.
Comes
J,
in-
J is a weight.
No, yeah, it's emery cloth.
Okay, it's different.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not, this isn't made from metal, it's made of wood.
Bob, you're up.
So is the J-cloth come in different prints?
Yes, yeah, a whole variety of them. I think
sanding, when you have a bowl like this, which is beautifully done, I'm not sure who made this, but for the kitchen. Anyway, this is easier to sand than a natural edge bowl like this, because something such as this can make mincemeat out of the digits. So, and even when you wear a glove, you have to be very, very careful. So, so for the natural edge bowls, I always use a power sander, and similarly when I'm turning on the lathe, I will put things in reverse, largely to be keeping the sawdust out of my face, and I also have a vacuum unit which is mounted here, so that probably 90% of the sawdust goes in the other direction rather than into my face and eyes and the like.